Regardless of what she's saying is true or not, I agree with the fact that something doesn't make sense. And so
Hmm.
I feel as though it doesn't hurt to just listen to what she has to say with an open mind, not so open that your brain falls out, but open enough to just kind of entertain all the possibilities.
Hello, Doom Scroll Club fam. We are back. Today we are going to be talking about some more Candace Owens, Pete Hegseth, Trump. We've got a couple of unfortunate shootings that have happened recently. But before we get into that, Cody, how has your week been?
Oh, it's been all right. Definitely didn't go as expected, but overall, not absolutely horrible. It's funny, like the last time we talked, I had, the whole spine infection hospital situation and hadn't had a fever. And so I made it to 14.5 days without a fever, which is technically still a record. But I didn't, I've been getting these recurring fevers, still trying to figure out what is going on with that. But they kind of got a little mad at me last time because I didn't go to the hospital last time I had a fever. And anytime you have a fever with a PICC line, they just like want you to go. And so got a fever this Monday. So then we went to the hospital and it's like, I don't know how to, it's a blessing in disguise to have a PICC line because it kind of gives you this VIP like fast track because they take it seriously.
Hmm.
So I mean, I still had to be in the ER for 24 hours. I feel like that's just the going thing. Even if they
Yeah.
admit you, you're still in the ER because you're waiting for a bed. So they, did a bunch of blood work right away, pulled me into this one room, and they put all the things on me, poked me a bunch of times, and did blood work and did all the, they did another MRI, they did a CT scan, and they did, just all the things to rule out to make sure I wasn't like dying of sepsis and it wasn't my PICC line that was infected now or something along those lines. Um, they ended up keeping me a couple of days, which wasn't expected, but they didn't really like how some of my blood work looked because my white blood cells were elevated, some inflammation markers. But yeah, I had a fever. But good news is MRI didn't show any worsening infection. The bad news is that it didn't show any improvement. So we're still going to finish out the antibiotics and do another MRI and kind of go from there, see if there's something rheumatological going on. And yeah, so I'm kind of a complicated mystery case at this point, and it's not the most fun because medical system is hard enough to navigate as it is. But then doctors, when they maybe don't know or it doesn't fit like textbook diagnoses, it's a struggle. So TBA, we'll see what's wrong with me. That's the question of the lifetime. But oh yeah, got out in time for Thanksgiving though, day before, so I was
That's
still able
important.
to cook and everything went well. Had a good Thanksgiving. So that was a long-winded intro. Sorry.
Went straight out of the hospital into slaving in the kitchen.
It was good though. Like it felt good to move around because when you're in the
Yeah,
hospital, you're so limited of what you can do. You're hooked up to shit. So it actually felt pretty good, and it was all went pretty smooth. Had a good time. So can't complain.
that's good.
Yeah. Should we dive into everything else that's been going on in the world?
Sure. You want to start us off?
Yeah. Wait, did I give you a chance to, did you update on life?
No,
No, I
no,
just went right into my own.
it's
So
okay.
let's go
My
into
life's
your
my
life.
life's pretty boring anyway.
No, we have to. Otherwise, I'm just a fucking asshole. So I was
Yeah,
just
no,
like, wait a minute.
it was just autopilot. Usually I go first and then you go.
Yeah.
That's why. No, week was good. I went out of town for work the first part of the week and then worked up until Thanksgiving Day and then had, Thanksgiving with my family in the earlier part of the afternoon and then had Thanksgiving with my wife's family in the evening. Ate a decent amount of food. Luckily, I have two families who, are pretty decent cooks, so there was no, lack of good food. But yeah, other than that, it's been pretty chill. This weekend, it's trying to I'm about to go out of town again, basically for the next 3 weeks of traveling. So just trying to get household stuff done and packing and trying to get a little bit of rest to prepare for that. But yeah, other than that, it's been, pretty much same old, same old.
Nice, nice. So are you like traveling 3 weeks in a row, or do you just come back each week, but you're traveling
I'm coming back each week. So I leave tomorrow for 4 days, and then I leave on the next Sunday for 4 days, and then the next week I am gone for I think 2 or 3 days, and then it's Christmas, and then my wife and I are going to Disneyland with my family. So that's
nice.
just a lot of travel.
Yeah,
mostly for work, but at least we're
one
getting to do something
thing.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been to Disneyland in so long. I need to go, but goddamn, it's expensive and life.
Yep. Well, they are having a deal for California residents. I believe you can buy the tickets as of December 14th, but you can only use it between January and I think March or April, something like that. But it's a 3-day park hopper pass for $250. So it's 50% off of what you would pay.
Okay.
So it's a pretty steep deal.
Is that for just 1 day?
No, that's for 3 days.
Oh, sorry, dude.
So yeah. So it's $250 for 3 days, and it's a park hopper pass, so you can jump back and forth between parks, but all the days. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Normally that would be like $550 right now.
Yeah.
So.
Oof. Crazy that $250 is a sale these days.
Yeah.
But it is a good sale. But also, holy shit. But cool. So let's see. What else was I going to say? Where are you traveling to on your trips?
So the first 2 trips are Texas, and then the third trip is Southern California.
Okay. So it's like, is the third one specifically for Disney, or is that work related?
That's work. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got
just
Texas,
down there?
Texas, Irvine, and then Anaheim.
Texas, Irvine, Anaheim. All right. Yep. Well, cool. So now that you're going to be crazy busy, should we talk about all the crazy busyness that's going on in the world currently?
Yeah, let's jump into it.
All right. So first story, should I just dive into this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Since I've been kind of following it a bit, I haven't as much lately, but yeah. Anywho, so we talked about it last week. Candace Owens announced that the French president, or didn't he resign? I'm so confused how all these things work. So Macron, the French president, as you may or may not know, she has been doing story or investigative journalism regarding Macron's wife, Brigitte Macron, claiming that Brigitte is a transgender woman. And for the longest time, everyone was like, what the fuck is this lady's deal? Obsession with, trans people and trying to out them or whatever. But come to find out, it's more about, child sex trafficking or, underage, that, shit, all that stuff, the Epstein and all that. Yeah. Child trafficking. So it's more about that because Brigitte is so much older than, what's his first name? Macron.
Yeah. Macron.
Brigitte is so much older than him. And, if Brigitte is trans, that could be, was this whole marriage thing like consensual? Was he groomed? That's the question. And I feel like regardless, we know that he was kind of groomed. Well, maybe not. It depends when they got together. But she used to be his teacher. So the likelihood is very high. But that's more of what she's shooting for. But she also just put out an announcement last week that the Macrons are trying to kill her, assassinate her. And they're working with the Israeli government in some way, shape, or form. I'll just kind of go over, what where everything is at right now. So, I can talk. November 22nd is when she first put out that tweet about possibly being assassinated, and it's funded by Gendarmerie Intervention Group, GIGN, Hit Squad. 1.5 million, one Israeli op over her Brigitte is trans claims tied to Kirk's death. So that's fun. She's also been talking about like Egyptian planes at the Utah airport. She's basically trying to connect the dots between everything that has gone on in the past, recent stuff. Yeah. But some updates on that. So the White House / counterterrorism confirmed her receipts that she had. So sounds like there could be some legitimacy to it, because the whole debate over the internet the past week has been, is she legit or is she in psychosis? Like, is she losing her mind? Or there's also the question of, is she doing this for hits and clicks and money? So everyone's been trying to figure out, is she on the right path? Is she really, truly trying to get to the bottom of this? Is she in psychosis, or is she trying to make more money? But so she teased. So November 29th, she teased concrete proof being tomorrow, which doesn't make sense. She doesn't post on the weekends, or at least especially Sunday, because she's a Christian and all that. But I think tomorrow she's supposedly supposed to bring like concrete proof that this is a thing. And she's still put out things on Twitter about being afraid for her safety situation. So again, the internet is split. 60% says she's brave, 40% says she's in psychosis. So she says, yeah, I don't know, that's basically it. She's just trying to figure out what is happening. Is she actually going to be assassinated? I came across some video on X. I think it was actually debunked by her, but it was some supposed whistleblower saying that they were trying to assassinate her live on air. So wherever she goes, even if it's for 5 minutes in her car going live, they'll find her and they'll kill her. And I think that ended up being false, but that was circulating around the past couple days, I think. But yeah, it's all a shit show. What do you think, Al?
First, I have to say, if I have to pause really quick, I just had a really bad sneezing attack.
Oh.
So my eyes are a little watery. My cat was sitting in my chair, and I'm very allergic to cats. And it just started while you were talking. So other than that, I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. So, I mean, it could be possible. I mean, we've seen people get silenced for saying much less than Candace has said, but it also could just be that Candace is spiraling out, especially, when you look at the Charlie Kirk stuff, they were very close friends. There are rumors that there was something more than that. But even if they were just friends, that's hard to lose someone in such a horrible way, being assassinated, also just being assassinated publicly to where you're seeing it. So it could be, she is just spinning out. I don't think that Charlie Kirk was killed by Tyler Robinson, or that it was his idea, or, I do think there is something going on, that something is fishy. So if she's thinking the same thing, it's easy to, kind of connect the dots and be like, well, he was talking about this. This is probably what happened. I'm talking about this, whatever. But yeah, I'm interested to see what her proof is going to be, what she says she has. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm always interested to see the receipts. Usually she's pretty good about bringing them. She is very good about, I feel like that, if anything, is the part that she's doing for, money and clicks, is she's very good at kind of breadcrumbing and teasing things to get people excited to watch and tune in. I'll give her credit. She is basically an amazing marketer. But, I mean, if it's true, it's true, regardless of how she puts it out into the world. So we'll see what it is. And regardless of what she's saying is true or not, I agree with the fact that something doesn't make sense. And so I feel as though it doesn't hurt to just listen to what she has to say with an open mind, not so open that your brain falls out, but open enough to just kind of entertain all the possibilities. And I know I don't trust the FBI. I don't trust our government. So, as much as I have many things that I disagree on when it comes to Candace Owens, she's done some pretty shady, I wouldn't say shady shit, but she's said some shit. She's, been a conservative commentator for a bit now, but she's kind of shifting gears in the sense that she's no longer really taking a left or right side. She's kind of just going up against all things that are corrupt and bullshit. So I'm not like she's grifting, she's flip flopping. I mean, maybe there's that little tiny bit of suspicion. But at the same time, I think it's okay for people to change their minds or change their approach to things. I'm more afraid of someone who never really changes their mind on certain topics or lets things evolve. If they're flip flopping constantly, that's one thing, because you're like, Jesus, this person doesn't even have an original thought. But if there's some time that has passed, and if they acknowledge things that they've changed their mind on, I actually respect people a lot when they come out and say those things. It's not easy to maybe admit that you're wrong, or you just have a different viewpoint on things. And so I'm just here kind of listening and seeing how things unfold. That's all I'm really approaching it as.
Yeah, I agree. I think, for example, most of my family were very liberal, but I also have family that are more stricter Republicans. And, I think in the same vein, like, I can respect other people's views, to a point. Obviously, if you're talking about something that's, going to hurt people, that's, one thing. But same thing, if, like, with Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's been, stepping away, whether or not her motives are nefarious or not, I think as a society, we should be accepting to people changing their minds, people growing and learning. People make a lot of mistakes. You see people, back in the 90s, I watched, this is kind of off the point, but I watched an episode of The Real World like 15-20 years ago, and it was this girl in the house, and she was like best friends with this guy Ty, who's like a black guy, and she thought it would be funny. Her and some of the other house guests, they were doing like some sort of like skit or something, and she did blackface. And it was like a big episode on blackface, basically. Like, she was kind of shamed in the house for it and all of this, and she had no idea. And I had never heard of the term blackface. That was never something that had ever been, in my peripheral at all. So, like, when I'm watching it, I'm like, well, I don't see why. And, that episode taught me, why it was wrong. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's totally understandable. I would never do that knowing that, but people do things, based on their history, based on what they've learned, and they can make mistakes, and you have to be able to be like, okay, well, you can learn from this and then forgive someone, and it's the same thing with, Candace Owens or MTG or, God forbid, even Trump. If Trump turned around and was like, I realized I made some really bad mistakes and this was wrong and did this, like, you have to have, some empathy of forgiveness. It doesn't mean, or not maybe not forgiveness, but, we don't have to, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but there is, like, we have to give people the chance to grow and learn and change their feelings without feeling like they're going to be condemned for life, right? I mean, actions are different. If you do something that's, that's horrible action wise, you have to pay the consequences for it. But we all in our past are going to make mistakes, and we're all going to learn from them. We all, I look back at, when I was younger, and like, one of my favorite shows was Mad TV. And I look at that now and I'm like, oh yeah, this would not be okay to, have on air at all today. And like, and understanding, how, like, I've grown as a person and how society has grown, like, I can identify, yeah, that was problematic, but, as a kid, and that was the society, that was hilarious, So it's just, Candace Owens, I hope this is something that, she is actually learning and growing from and is making a change in life. And it's not something that she's just doing for clicks. Either way, even if she's doing this for clicks, I don't think anyone should be, their safety should be, their safety should be targeted. I feel like, we all have, that's why we're in America, it's supposed to be our First Amendment rights, have the right to say what we want, what we feel, what we want. And, if you do something that's negative, there's a consequence, but we have the right to speak our minds, and you shouldn't be targeted for that. And I think that's kind of, I believe it's ICE just got funding or something where, now they're going to be looking through like everyone's social media, like that's filtering through stuff. And it's scary. I think about you and me, and like, luckily, like we're no one. We have, like 5 subscribers, so,
Yeah.
hopefully we're not on the, like on a list of where, but it's scary thinking like, God, you could be put on a list just because, you don't agree with, what the administration's doing, or you don't agree with what, certain people are doing. And that just feels like that's the kind of world we're being put into. It's very 1984,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to say shit on the internet to be on a list. You just have to vote Democrat. That's the list. They already have it.
Yeah.
It's in their hands. So it's kind of, it could be kind of anxiety provoking, but at the same time, that they know who they would have it in for anyways.
I just saw a video, and it's for one of the special elections that's coming up, and I can't remember, it was like Minnesota or something like that. It was a video talking about the mailers that were coming out from I don't know if it was from the Republican Party or something, but it was going to all the Republican registered voters, and it was basically saying like, if you don't vote, we are going to know that you didn't vote, and there will be consequences, or like you will be on a list, threatening their own voters to vote, and like that's crazy, absolutely crazy and scary.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I know there was when all of the Charlie Kirk stuff was happening, and they were basically calling to kill Democrats. Doesn't ever like, should we register as Republican? Like, even if we don't vote that way, is this what we should do to kind of like fly under the radar just in case shit gets real weird?
Yeah, or just be unregistered.
Intense. Yeah,
yeah,
pretty intense. I feel like every time I vote, I get jury duty that year. So yeah, it was probably a coincidence, but anywho. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah. So
take that one.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So we're gonna talk about Pete Hegseth, our lovely head of the Department of War, because that's the country we live in. We're not the Department of Justice anymore. We're just the Department of War, which seems fitting. So Washington Post on November 28th had an exclusive where Hegseth verbally ordered to kill everybody on a September 2nd Venezuelan boat strike. The Navy SEALs fired a second missile on 2 survivors clinging to the wreck. Many people have said that constitutes a war crime. One, the strike itself was never approved by Congress, which they're supposed to be, except for, extreme, circumstances, but Congress is supposed to approve that stuff. But the fact that there were 2 survivors clinging to the wreckage of the boat, there's basically no way for them to fire back or do anything, and for them to strike unarmed people is pretty disgusting and constitutes war crime. So now they're looking into, there's going to be an investigation that has been approved by both Republicans and Democrats to look into this. I also just saw a video of Trump being asked if he gave the direction to do the second strike. Trump said that he did not, and he would not have done that, and that Pete Hegseth said that he didn't do it, and that he trusts Pete Hegseth. So people are saying that this could be Trump's way of, one, pushing blame on Hegseth, and Hegseth going to be the next person being kicked out of the administration, right? Because then Trump can say, well, I never approved that if Hegseth did it, and if they prove that Hegseth did it, which they should be able to do, he's already saying that he wouldn't have agreed with that. So yeah, I mean, this is, one thing that luckily we're seeing both Republicans and Democrats agreeing on is wrong, because not only that, this isn't just within our country anymore. We are now set up for, being targeted by the UN and other countries, because we overstepped majorly. We could possibly be putting ourselves, the target of a war. And yeah, it's not good. I don't know if we've ever been in this situation before, at least, from actions we've done. We probably have, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is big. So we'll see. I'm hoping that, I believe that all of those meetings are recorded in some way. So there should be like direct proof if Hegseth did command the second strike or not. But second strike at all, just the strikes themselves were pretty unconstitutional. Again, Congress didn't approve them. These were supposedly, there's never been proof that these were drug boats, but these were supposedly boats that were bringing drugs into the United States. But that's not a capital crime. So death shouldn't have been the answer anyway. At most, it could have been, a seizure and arrest, but not death unless they were fired upon. But also, I believe they were still in Venezuelan waters. So we had really no right to strike at all. So yeah, I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, I think it's fucking bullshit for, one. I think, this is just another thing that it's not about the drugs. They're not telling us exactly what it's about, but I'm sure it's about some sort of, well, two things, probably a distraction for one, two, resources, usually oil. So yeah, if it was about the drugs, he wouldn't have just pardoned, basically a drug lord from Honduras a couple days ago. And yeah, how can you blow people up and claim because of drugs, but then pardon people like within the same week?
Pardon a man who was sentenced to 45 years in I believe it was the New York District Court, and you're going to pardon him and he hasn't even served a year.
And the question is, why are you pardoning this motherfucker? Like, out of all the people, like, this is, and now, why now? And just why? And they're claiming that they want to be the most transparent administration, and it's just fucking bullshit. It's like, this is the least transparent administration, and it's just chaos. I feel like if the Republicans wanted to actually be respected, even if they, wanted to carry out everything that they say they wanted to carry out, they would have an actual plan. I feel like they're just being impulsive about everything. Yeah. It's like an administration who is completely ADHD and just like can't focus and is just blowing shit up left and right. And it makes us look bad. It makes the country look bad. It makes me feel uncertain and anxious and just, yeah. So
I mean, it makes me feel ashamed to be part of this country. Yeah. I mean, not that I was, a super patriot growing up, but I, especially after 9/11, and I was a kid. I think I was 10 or 11 when that happened. I think it was 11 when that happened. Like the impact that had on me as a youth and as on a lot of youth, which is why we had such an uptick in people joining the military, was, defending your country. And, I was always proud to be an American, like that's literally in the song that, they sing all the time. Right. And, it's kind of instilled in you, but I was always proud to, to be American. We have a lot of stuff that other countries don't have. We have a lot of rights that other countries don't have. At least that's what we're taught, right?
That's what we're taught. Yeah.
That's what we're taught, right? America is number one. If you go anywhere else, yeah. So, I was always proud of, I thought about joining the military at one point. I was like, yeah. And then I was like, well, I can't even play Call of Duty, so that probably wouldn't be a good idea, but, I still do. I still respect, servicemen and servicewomen or service people, because I'm not putting my life out on the line for our safety. They are, and I appreciate everything that they do, but I lost what I was going for. I had pride in being an American, right? And now I just look at it and I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of the actions that this administration is doing. I'm ashamed of the actions that our military is doing. I do know that the military is, just doing what they're told. I don't think, but I think there are some people in the military that are enjoying what they're doing. And, I hope that, whatever. But I do think that there are a lot of people out there that don't agree, going back to, what we talked about last week with the video with the, not to do, not to follow orders that are unlawful. Right. I really, really hope that we see some pushback on stuff like this. I just, we can't just keep having people doing whatever someone says, because what's going to happen is if this is deemed a war crime, if they do an investigation of this, Pete Hegseth is going to be, at least fired, hopefully, but, he could face sentencing, we don't know, but anyone who was a part of that, that attack could face, crimes. So I don't know. I'm just so disappointed in our country because I know we have been better and we can do better.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm on the same page as far as not feeling proud to be American. We are raised to be proud to be American. It's, what, patriotic, like we had like patriotic day at school where you wear red, white, and blue. And this wasn't even on, obviously we're not in school 4th of July. So there's other ways they work it into the system. But there's the Pledge of Allegiance every morning at school. I don't know how many other countries do that. And I know there's a lot of countries that think it's weird. I'm like, it is weird now that I think of it. But it's just something that we grew up doing. And we were taught that America was the best country in the world because we have the most freedom, which is interesting when you grow up and you realize most countries have the same freedoms that we do. I think freedom of speech is one that is probably like the biggest thing that we still like to say that we have that other countries don't, which is true and false depending. Right. And I'm like, but now is that still true? And this was the party that was running off of keeping free speech intact.
Yeah.
Have they done that? It's only gotten worse. The hypocrisy again.
Another thing that I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've seen a couple tweets from Hegseth and I think Trump as well. I'd have to double check, but I think Trump as well, where they've referenced America as the homeland. And I don't think I've ever seen that phrase used except for Nazi propaganda as the homeland.
Interesting.
So I mean, I could be wrong. That could just be something that people have used all this time. And I've never noticed it until recently. But yeah, I was like, I've never seen that on, I've never seen America referenced as the homeland. And the only time I've ever seen that phrase is like, when you watch movies about like Nazi Germany and they would refer to it as the homeland. So yeah.
Interesting. What do they call it in Handmaid's Tale? Is it the homeland or is it just... Gilead.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Gilead, homeland, it sounds similar. But yeah. So I think it really just puts a stain on America in general because I feel like we've always, when you're a child, you're naive. And I feel like I saw us as like the good guys, the people who would help other countries or, just having morals, having respect for humanity. And now it's like we've become who we used to be against, basically like instigating things, supporting people that we probably shouldn't, doing things that are not for the greater good of the whole world. And it's disappointing. And I think the right tends to interpret the left's view of things as hating America. It's like, it's not, I don't hate America. I miss, what do I miss really? I mean, I miss a very small percentage of years it's just that, I miss when we got along a little bit better, when we were more united. I miss feeling proud to be American. And it's been a long time, specifically since 2016, since I have felt that. So I don't want to see this country fail. I don't want to see bad things happen. I don't even want to see Trump fail because that means this whole country is failing and it affects everybody. Like, I love this country and I just want the best for everyone who lives in it, Yeah,
100% agree. I think, even though it gets, or maybe the initial intent was wrong, but at least the values that I took from, learning about why, America was started is, people wanted to just live their lives. They didn't want, prosecution of government. They wanted to be able to do whatever they wanted as long as, if it wasn't affecting some other people, they should be able to live their lives. Right. Obviously there's, people can't just do anything, but it's, it's sad when you see people using that rhetoric as a way, using that logic in a way of like, well, my freedoms are being stood upon, but really they're not. It's like, you can be a conservative Christian person and live your life and go to church and have your values and die and go to heaven if that's what you believe, and still have a neighbor who is maybe a trans, Muslim or Jewish or Satanist, anything, it doesn't affect you, and as long as people can, be respectful of each other, if I know someone is a Christian, I'm not going to like talk down to them. I'm going to respect their views. If they're going to church on Sunday, I'm going to wave hi to them, and have fun at church. It doesn't affect me. You're not forcing me to go to church. And as long as you're respectful of me, I'm going to be respectful of you. And that's how it should be. People should be able to live their lives, in any way, as long as it's, not hurting others,
Yeah. 100% agree. We have come so far in the wrong direction. Essentially, that kind of leads me, is kind of off the rail question, but it's something that I've seen a lot, and I feel like it's more of a left-sided thing, but I could be wrong. Could be on both sides of stuff, but I know specifically, it happened the first time Trump was president, and I feel like it kind of doubled down this time, when Trump was reelected. Now I've seen a lot. I don't know. I need to see at the point. A lot of people are like, if you voted for Trump, you have no room in my life. Goodbye. We're not friends. We're not family, nothing. And they, cut ties. What is your opinion on that? Can you still be friends with someone who voted for Trump? Can you still respect someone who voted for Trump? Do they have room in your life? Or do you feel like they need to be, kicked out, removed completely?
That's a good point. And that's, I don't think there's a black or white answer. There's definitely a gray answer. I have a family member, my uncle is a Trump supporter. And, he is someone who I idolized growing up. And it was really hard finding that out. It doesn't change the person he is. His view is more of, it's not the trans stuff that bothers him. He's very supportive of me. Not that means that he, is justified in what his beliefs are. But there are times when, stuff is said. We had Thanksgiving, and, he was saying some stuff that, I wholeheartedly didn't believe in. And, but again, that's his right to, have his feelings. And I don't know. It's hard because, it's hard to separate someone that you had, a certain belief in, like I said, I idolized my uncle, and so to have that, I'm still struggling with how I feel, because a part of me wants to just be like, what you're supporting, is really, basically my non-existence, and, whether or not that's what you are thinking of, you are supporting an administration that is pushing for that. And that's hurtful. That hurts me. And that hurts me that you would support something that would do that. But on the other hand, that's, the person that, bought me my first instrument, or, and stuff like that. And, on my wife's side, my wife's godfather, he voted for Trump the first time around, just because I believe they're libertarians, or Republican. I can't remember. I believe he was more libertarian. And so that was just the way to vote, right? You kind of just voted with your party or whatever. He also didn't really look into a lot of things. And so after Trump was elected the first time and he saw what they were doing and their stances, and he had some, hard conversations with my wife, he definitely regretted voting for Trump. I think there are a lot of people who vote one way just because that's what their party does, right? I think there's a lot of people that don't really fact check, and having family members who only watch Fox News, only listen to, I don't know if he's still even on there, but like listen to Rush Limbaugh and like, like stuff like that, Sean Hannity, they are being told something completely different from what facts are. They are being told stuff that is a huge manipulation of the truth. So if that's all I consumed all day, yeah, I would totally feel the same way. I'd be like, oh yeah, there's, immigrants coming in and they're raping and killing and they're eating our dogs. We have to save the dogs, like if that's all you're hearing all the time, like that's what your truth is, and it takes time, which people don't have these days, but it takes time to fact check and learn and make sure that, what someone is saying is just because they're, on a news network doesn't mean they're telling the truth. And especially in today, like with AI and stuff, there are so many things out there where, I'll read an article that's very, Democrat leaning. That's like super outrageous about something Republicans are doing or something like that. And I'll send that to my wife and my wife will be like, yeah, that's fake. But it's easy to get pulled into something and be like, oh my God, did you see this? And then it's like, yeah, I should have taken a step back and I should have like double checked before I reacted. But yeah, when it comes to, family and friends, I think it's a personal decision. You have to, there are, I made a post actually on my Facebook, like right after the Charlie Kirk assassination. I had people who I knew were Republican, but had always been supportive of me because they were family, and I never felt, any judgment from them. But I had people that were posting, like, Charlie Kirk's a saint and, he just believed everything, like whatever. And I like had to be like, okay, like you can be like, this shouldn't have happened. This is wrong. But he definitely wasn't a saint. He said his whole thing was going off of hate. He wasn't a good person, and I made a post and I was like, hey, if you are someone who supports someone who has views like this, like, we don't have to be friends. Like, unfollow me. Like, I wish you the best in life. I really do. I don't want anyone to suffer. I wish you the best in life. But if you believe in these same things, you obviously don't believe in, my right to exist, and so, of course, no one unfollowed me and they still believe what they want to believe. And I haven't made the decision to cut people out. I'm probably a bit of coward in that way, but I also do believe that there is space for, like I said, there's space for learning and growth. And I would rather be there when those people are like, yeah, I made a mistake, that was wrong, and have open arms than just be like, yeah, fuck you. You made this decision. I don't want nothing to do with you. But again, that depends on the person too. If I had someone who was like posting anti-trans things all the time, yeah, I would, yeah, we're not going to be friends. We're like, go off and live your life. That's fine. But I don't want you on my Facebook. I don't want you on this, Yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's hard because, I feel like the first vote for him in 2016 was a little different because he didn't run off of trans issues specifically. He even held up like a rainbow flag and was like, I support the LGBTQIA community, when he
Caitlyn Jenner can come in and use the women's bathroom anytime.
Exactly. So it's a bit different this time around because of the fact that he ran off of the talking points of, basically the making everyone hate trans people without even knowing what it even meant or who trans people were. So it definitely stings a little more knowing, people in my life who voted for him the second time around. But I feel like there's definitely pressure to cut those people out of your lives, but I feel like it's an individual choice. We don't get to pressure anyone to cut people out of their lives. Yeah. It is up to them. It's their life, their relationship, and that sort of thing. I don't think anyone is a coward, or I don't think less of anyone. I mean, my parents voted for Trump. So am I just supposed to cut my parents out of my life because they voted for Trump? Some people might make that choice, but that's not one that I'm going to make because, again, we're just going to stay divided if we cut people out of our lives who have different political views. And I know it's different in the fact that a lot of the views of this political party right now has a direct effect on how we live our lives, or how we might potentially be able to live our lives, or if we're, able to exist. And that's something that is very heavy. It weighs very heavy. But at the same time, cutting people out, we're still just not everyone's a one issue voter, and it takes out the humanity. Nothing takes the humanity out of people like politics. And when it comes to like my parents, I know that they didn't vote for Trump because of the trans stuff. I feel like they more voted for Trump due to ignorance of the trans stuff that he was running on. But also, I mean, like, my parents have been like lifelong Republicans. So they, again, they're not going to vote Democrat. They just don't agree with Democrat policies. So unfortunately, despite whoever is in office, they're always going to vote that way. And, they're older. I just like, it hurts. Yeah. But it's just not something that I'm willing to cut them out of my life for. And again, I still want to keep open conversations. I'm not afraid of people who voted for Trump. I do actually enjoy having conversations with people who have different opinions, who voted for Trump, who have different views. I think that's how we, come together. That's how we find out we are more alike than we are different. And at the end of the day, the more conversations you have, usually, if they're respectful, there's actually some growth and positive outcomes to come of it. But I think, there's this weird tension or pressure to cut people out of your life who voted a certain way. And I get it, but I still think it's up to that person specifically. It's not affecting anyone else if you still keep, your parents in your life that voted for Trump. Like, how is that hurting, someone on the internet or whatever? And
I agree.
It's a tough decision. And it's not something that I've seen people on the right be like, oh, they voted for Harris, I'm not going to talk to my parents anymore or whatever. I don't know. It just makes me feel like there's definitely something when it comes to the left where we're not as great with forgiveness. Like, we have a lot of empathy, especially for minorities, people who are struggling, people who need some help, and stuff like that. But we lack empathy when it comes to maybe someone falling into beliefs that they maybe don't completely understand, or just kind of ignorant about. I just feel like there's a lot of people who've been a little bit brainwashed, like, if I wasn't trans, if I had no reason to question my upbringing, and, I went to a Christian school my whole life, I figured I was going to be a Republican. I couldn't vote yet, in high school and shit. But if I had the chance, I probably would have voted Republican. If I had no reason to question faith, beliefs, and that sort of thing, I would have followed suit. So I have empathy for that. I have empathy for people who've never had to question their beliefs, and they just do something because it's what they were taught or what they've always done. And I wish we were a little bit softer when it came to tolerance of people having different beliefs, even when it's something that like might be a little offensive, because chances are there's a lot of ignorance there. And if you can talk, if you have conversations, the less ignorance there is. I might sound like an asshole for all of that, but it's just like, I don't know. I guess I still have hope that I can still talk to people.
I completely agree. I think most divisions could be solved by getting to know someone that thinks differently than you or lives differently. I think a lot of people who are, quote unquote racist, have just never taken the time to actually make friends or get to know someone who is a person of color, get to understand their lives and understand that they probably have the same thoughts and feelings about everyday life, right? We're all the same. It's easy to just pinpoint someone with differences, but if you don't take the time to get to know someone, I mean, that's a huge reason why this administration is going after education, because most people, most, I don't want to say most conservatives, but most people who, have certain values, or certain, not values, but certain opinions that they've learned from their parents and their families growing up. Those who go to school and college tend to have that world shift a little bit, because, they're being thrown into, hopefully, schools that are diverse. They are learning from, you might have, young men who have, always thought that, they're number one, women are subservient, and then they go and they take a college course from, a badass, female professor who like knows what they're talking about, and they learn to respect a woman, and that changes the shift. You might have someone who, joins a fraternity or a sorority with someone, and they're, with people of different colors and backgrounds, and it makes you, learn and think. And same thing with trans people. I think a lot of people who are scared of trans people all of a sudden would feel differently if they just sat down and actually talked and met someone, and not in a debate way where people are getting defensive and not listening. But if most of the people wouldn't know I'm trans, most people don't know that I'm trans that I talk to, and I make great friendships, and, I don't think that, they would think less of me if they knew that I was trans. I think if they knew I was trans beforehand, they would already have that wall and that judgment up. I think more of humankind, that, I think that those people would still want to be my friends, and it's the same thing with Facebook. I have friends that knew me before transition, know me after, and they're definitely like Republicans, some of them,
Yeah.
but they're still my friends and they still care about me, and it's a weird situation. But I do think that, there's just more possibility of growth if people are just willing to actually sit and listen and not close their minds off to everything.
Yeah. And I think there's also that thing where people can be financially conservative but socially liberal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something I struggled with too, because I follow a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, fitness brands, and I think a lot of them made decisions to vote, financially. They voted financially as their priority. Like whatever might benefit them more financially as a business is where their vote went, because that's their livelihood. They weren't even thinking about conservative values and traditional family values. They weren't thinking about Christian nationalism. But then you have this thing of like, okay, well, do I not support this brand anymore? Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard to find a brand. Let's just say any brand that didn't say anything politically voted Republican, even if they said nothing. So then you have to question, well, who do I support? You're not always going to know. And I think all you can do is really just make a point to support the brands that spoke out against what is happening, and, emphasize that, pay attention to that. But otherwise, I think if we truly knew what brand, how they actually voted, we would have no one left to like spend our, like give our money. Mm-hmm. We'd be like, fuck, I can't buy anything,
Yeah.
But it's hard because you're just you feel betrayed in a moment. It feels personal when you see maybe someone you respect or a brand that you love who either doesn't speak out, doesn't say anything, or maybe even says who they voted for, and you're just like, shit. Well,
I was a big fan of American Eagle. Like the last 10-15 years, that's where majority of my clothes was American Eagle. And that last Sydney Sweeney ads, I was like, yeah, I definitely don't align with that. Whether or not that was their intent or not, I was like, yeah, I mean, the fact that they didn't apologize and were like, oh shit, that's not what we meant, scrap it, like I was like, yeah, I as much as I like their clothing, like, yeah, I'm good. I can go somewhere else, I don't think that's the case for everything. And again, I think the same thing with like cutting people out. You also, if I have a friend who still wants to shop at American Eagle, I'm not going to judge them for doing that. That's their own personal choice. I think, as a society, we have gotten into a place where, it's white, it's black or white, right? And there's no middle gray. And if you don't do exactly what I'm doing because I feel this way, you're in the wrong. And it's like, no, there can be a gray, and we just need to respect each other's choices.
Yeah. I feel like we've all fallen into black and white thinking, and everyone's all good or all bad, and it's just not that simple. And we're going to have a lot of, differing opinions and beliefs, because that's what being human is about. So I don't know. I just wanted to ask that question because in a time where we're very divided, I just like to know where you stand with things, or,
I'm unfriending you right now.
Oh shit. But yeah, it's like I know people like unfriend people for like, or kick people out of their lives for like the simplest things nowadays, and it almost makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
So yeah, just wanted to ask.
Yeah, a long tangent into it, but no, I agree. I think it's a personal choice. I think if your friends or a family member is someone who is negatively harming you in any way, you should remove them from social media, or remove them from contact. I don't mean kill them. Please don't ever take me as saying kill them. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. But you should be able to remove them socially from your life. I have other friends who are trans who have parents that are extremely like just toxic, and this isn't even about trans. I know other people who just have family members who are toxic. And if it is negatively affecting your day-to-day life, if you are being told by someone that you shouldn't exist, or, that you're a horrible person, or, just not being a support system, then remove them from your life. There's no room for that, right? But again, if you don't do that, I am not going to judge you for doing that. That is your personal choice to make. And I think we need to have empathy for those people in those situations. I'm not going to tell my friend, hey, you're putting yourself in that situation, so, fuck off. Like, I'm not gonna have empathy for you. I'm gonna be like, yeah, that really sucks. If I was in that situation, I would probably do this. But, if you can't do that, then, I'm just gonna be here as a support if you need someone to talk to, Yeah.
Yeah. Word. Well, now that we went on that tangent, we probably should cut some things short.
So let's jump into the National Guard incident. Yeah. The shooter was ID'd as an Afghan national. So let's see. November 26th, Farragut West Metro ambush. 2 West Virginia Guard members were shot. Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, she was 20, and Sergeant Andrew Wolf, who was 24. Beckstrom died. Wolf is still critical. The suspect was going to butcher this name, and I apologize in advance. The suspect was Ramanullah Lakanwal. And he was an Afghan immigrant from 2021. He apparently arrived during the Biden evac for the 2024 asylum. I don't really know much about this. You might know more about it than me, but the only thing that I've seen is, this has been a reason for Trump to now, take away any immigration from third world countries, apparently. And he's blaming the Biden administration basically for this happened. But his administration vetted this person, so I think there's failure on all points. I don't know if it's been revealed why this person did this, what their motives were.
Yeah, not yet.
So it's hard to say if this was, like an attack on America type of thing, or if this was political views, if this was, frustration with, as an immigrant, with, seeing military and ICE coming in and taking immigrants. We don't know what that was. So it's hard to really, say, but it is, again, a horrible situation. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. It's hard because it's like, how are you going to know sometimes? But I think all parties are to blame on this one. You know, the Biden exit of Afghanistan was a shit show. And then he applied for asylum and was granted or he applied in 2024, was granted asylum by the Trump administration. So again, I think they're both at fault, but of course Trump wants to blame Democrats here, which is the worst, least presidential thing that a president can do, but that's on brand for him. So what more would we expect? But as far as, you know, I don't know, but it sounds like it's just one of those things that like terrorist attack. It sounds terrorist attacky. I know Candace Owens also put out a thing that I don't know. Again, is she in psychosis or is she legit? She said there's going to be like a 9/11 style terrorist attack in the second week of December, essentially telling people. And it's like, okay, well, if that was true, why would you know? And would they still carry it out now that you've tweeted it out to like, maybe that was the point. I don't know. But yeah, I think sometimes you'll just get radicalized, but he's probably pissed about something. I think I did see a story where he was mad about his friend not getting granted asylum, but he was. How that, you know, translates into shooting 2 National Guardsmen, I don't know. But we'll find out eventually, maybe, but we don't know much yet.
Yeah. So it's definitely a developing story, and so we'll probably be following up on it as the weeks come. But yeah, it's sad. Any shooting in this country is sad. I think we can even, you know, talk about, you know, the Stockton shooting. As people who live in California, last night, there was a shooting at a birthday party. It's like an ice cream place. And last I saw, 4 dead, 11 wounded. So I believe there was one more. So I think we're now up to 15. When I last saw, but there was a 21-year-old adult that was killed, and 3 kids ages 8, 9, and 14. The suspect is still at large. They don't know who it is. It could be gang related, but they're still open. There's nothing really out there. You know, it's just unfortunately another day in America where it's like it's shooting every day. But it's definitely sad when it's, you know, so close to home. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, you know, another day in America. Got shootings and blowing shit up and Trump. So should we move on to what we're watching and that's fun stuff?
Yeah. So we just started the first episode of season 5 of Stranger Things. I think we got halfway through before I fell asleep because we had just finished the season 4 finale. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, I have to know what happens. And so we started the 5th season, and then like 30 minutes in, I was like passed out.
Like, bye.
Yeah, so I have to continue watching that. I am a little nervous because I'm seeing a lot of negative feedback on the show. I know there is kind of a boycott on it due to Noah Schnapp and the actor who plays Murray because of their Zionist views and their public views and stuff that happened. I want to say 2020. So I know there's been a lot of backlash on that and boycott on that. I have seen people talking about how basically the episodes that were released are just kind of filler episodes, and it felt like more of like a cash grab to make more money. There's really nothing, you know, plot-wise being pushed forward. I don't know that yet, but I'm a little disappointed if that is the case because I really did enjoy Stranger Things. So I'm hoping when I watch it, they'll be proved wrong, and I'll still enjoy it. But other than that, what else have we been watching? It's mostly been Stranger Things, and we just rewatched the part 1 of Wicked. We're going to watch the new movie tonight, so I'm excited for that. What about you?
Top Chef. We're on season 15 of Top Chef now, and I mean, to be fair, we started at season 10, I think, so we didn't start from season 1 all the way up to but yeah, it's been good. Love that shit. We have not started watching the latest Stranger Things yet. That is on this due, but the problem is now I'm conflicted because we're like thinking we want to rewatch the previous series, and but it's really hard to do when you know that there's new ones out, and then you're like, that's a long time. There's a lot of seasons, and it'll take a bit to rewatch them all. But then again, it might be a good thing.
They're all, I mean, most of them are only, an hour long, and they're 8 to 9 episodes per season. I think the last season they had a couple episodes that were like an hour and a half, 2 hours. But I definitely would recommend rewatching it, because it's from not watching it for so many years and then rewatching it. I was like, oh, I missed a lot of plot points that I just don't remember anymore. I think, I don't know if I was just or what, but I couldn't remember half of what happened in season 4, which was the most recent season I had watched of the series.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a good refresher to like watch that and be like, oh, okay. I do know the Duffer Brothers released kind of a view guide of specific episodes that you should go back and watch before watching season 5. So maybe just do that. Maybe just watch, I think it's like 5 or 6 episodes spanned throughout the 4 seasons, but those are supposed to have the most relevance to season 5. So,
okay. Well, that's good to know. Maybe we could do that, save us some time.
Yeah.
But so that's about it. I feel like, I guess I haven't been like scrolling as much just to kind of keep up on the news of things, because I'm finding just it's a big source of overstimulation for me. So I'm trying to keep that kind of on the lower levels. YouTube, I'm trying to think if there's anything I've been like really enjoying. I like Matt Diavella's videos. I feel like they're calming. They're very like, what's it called? Entertaining, but also you learn something you take away from it. And then of course people like Chris Bumstead and that sort of thing, but nothing too exciting. But that's all we're really watching right now. So yeah, keep you posted if we dive into Stranger Things.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll end the episode. I don't know if you have anything you want to say to viewers. I would just say, are you cutting anyone out of your family? Leave us a comment. Drop their name, their address, their social security number, and their I think we should have that conversation of like, what is your thought on should people just cut people out, or is it better to have empathy and hope for change?
Let us know. Or if you're cutting us out, you can still let us know.
Make sure to subscribe first and then cut us out.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Peace out. And we will talk to you next week.